What if I told you that one day the greatest power on earth knowingly exposed its own people to poison, not by accident, not during war, but during peace? No enemy attack, no invasion, just silence and secrets. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is documented history. And the most disturbing part? Most Americans have never been taught about it. When we think of poison, we imagine enemies, assassins, or foreign threats. But history shows something far darker. There were moments when the danger didn't come from outside America. It came from within its own institutions. In the name of science, national security, and progress, ordinary citizens became test subjects. Without consent, without warning, and without protection. This is the story of multiple days, not just one. But together, they represent the day America crossed a line. In 1932, the U.S. government began a medical study in Tuskegee, Alabama. The subjects? Poor African-American men. They were told they were being treated for bad blood. But the truth was horrifying. They were intentionally left untreated for syphilis, even after a cure was discovered. Doctors watched. Officials recorded. Men suffered. Families were destroyed. Children were born with the disease. Wives were infected. This continued for 40 years, not hidden by accident, but protected by silence. During the Cold War, fear ruled everything. The U.S. military wanted to know, what would happen if chemical or biological agents were released over cities? So they tested it on their own people. In cities like San Francisco, St. Louis, Minneapolis, chemicals were sprayed into the air without public knowledge. Citizens breathed them in. Children played under them. Families lived inside the experiment. Officials later claimed the chemicals were harmless, but residents reported long-term illnesses. Proof existed. Accountability did not. If poison can harm the body, what about poison for the mind? From the 1950s to the 1970s, the CIA ran MKUltra. People were given LSD, psychoactive drugs, chemical substances, without consent. Some were prisoners. Some were hospital patients. Some were ordinary citizens. Lives were permanently damaged. At least one death was officially acknowledged. Records were destroyed. And what survived? Just enough truth to be terrifying. During the nuclear age, radiation was poorly understood or ignored. The U.S. government exposed soldiers, hospital patients, pregnant women to radioactive substances. Some were injected, some were fed contaminated food, some were placed near blast sites. Years later, cancers appeared. Families demanded answers, and the truth slowly leaked out. This wasn't about cruelty alone. It was about fear of enemies, desire for power, obsession with control, belief that the few could be sacrificed for the many. Governments don't always see people as humans. Sometimes they see data points. If this happened before, what stops it from happening again? Most of these truths only surfaced because whistleblowers spoke, journalists investigated, victims refused to stay silent. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes. These were not enemies. They were citizens. People who trusted their government. People who believed they were safe. And that trust was poisoned. During World War II and the Cold War, American soldiers believed they were serving their country. What they didn't know was that their own government was testing weapons on them. Thousands of soldiers were exposed to mustard gas, nerve agents, chemical clouds. Some were ordered into gas chambers for training. Others were placed near open-air chemical explosions. No proper protection, no informed consent. Many were told it was harmless smoke. Decades later, veterans developed skin diseases, lung failure, blindness, aggressive cancers. When they asked for help, they were told no records existed. Prisons became convenient testing grounds. Why? Because prisoners couldn't refuse. Inmates were injected with experimental drugs, chemical compounds, radioactive materials. Some were promised shorter sentences. Others were never even asked. Hospitals weren't safer. Patients, including children, were exposed to radioactive tracers, experimental treatments, unapproved chemical trials, often without full explanation. Doctors followed orders. Ethics were ignored, and paperwork made it legal. Poison doesn't just damage the body, it destroys trust. When citizens learned the truth decades later, the damage was irreversible. People began asking, if they lied before, are they lying now? Who decides whose life is expendable? What happens in the name of national security today? Trust, once broken, never fully heals. Some poison didn't come through needles or gas. It came through water, air, soil. Industrial waste was dumped near communities. Factories leaked chemicals into rivers. Military bases contaminated groundwater. In some cases, officials knew for years. They delayed action to avoid panic, protect industries, escape liability. Meanwhile, citizens drank the water. Children grew up sick. By the time warnings came, the damage was already done. Truth rarely comes from power. It comes from people who risk everything. Scientists, doctors, journalists, victims. Some were fired, some were threatened, some were silenced. But documents leaked. Hearings were forced. Investigations began. And America was forced to confront a truth it didn't want to see. Eventually, apologies were issued. Statements were made. Committees were formed. But ask the victims, was compensation enough? Was accountability real? Did anyone go to prison? In most cases, no one was punished. The system apologized to itself. Supporters argue, every nation does this. National security requires sacrifice. But critics ask, who chooses the sacrifice? And why is it always the powerless? History shows a pattern. The poor, minorities, prisoners, soldiers are always chosen first. Technology has evolved. Surveillance is stronger. Testing is more sophisticated. Secrecy is easier than ever. Governments today possess tools far more powerful than chemical gas. The question isn't, could it happen again? The question is, would we even know? Victims didn't just lose health. They lost faith. Faith in doctors, institutions, authority. Some never trusted science again. Others lived with unanswered questions their entire lives. Children inherited fear. Communities inherited trauma. This is the long shadow of hidden experiments. Why aren't these stories taught widely? Because they challenge a comforting narrative. They force people to accept that governments can harm their own people. Power doesn't equal morality. Democracy doesn't guarantee protection. Forgetting is easier than facing guilt. And that brings us to the final question. If the truth was buried once, how many truths are still buried today?